Hi, I'm Guinn Unger. I'm on the board of directors of La Plata Electric Association, and I'm running for re-election in District 4. I had intended to end this series of True Facts videos after number 9, but this morning the Durango Herald published an op-ed from Duane Highley, who's the CEO of Tri-State Generation and Transmission Company, LPEA's wholesale energy supplier. And after reading the article, I felt that the lies and misinformation in the article had to be addressed. I first met Duane Highley at last year's LPEA annual meeting, and I have to admit that at the time I was impressed. He seemed to be saying all the right things about cleaner energy and more concern about the member co-ops and working together. But I quickly learned that what Mr. Highley says and what Mr. Highley does can be quite different. It reminds me of the old joke that asks, how can you tell when a politician is lying? When his lips are moving. I reached the point some time ago of not believing anything that Mr. Highley says. I realize that's pretty extreme, but that's the way I feel, and I think it's perfectly justifiable. You can read the op-ed in the Herald, but I'd like to address a couple of items that I think are particularly contentious. This is quoting Mr. Highley. This is not just a green movement, it's also an economic movement. By dramatically increasing our use of lower-cost renewable energy and with a strong focus on cost management, Tri-State's wholesale rates have not increased in the past 4 years, and we forecast rates to remain stable or decrease in the next decade. Tri-State continues to talk about how they're holding their rates flat. But holding rates flat in a world where market rates are significantly lower than yours is no great achievement and certainly not a reason to pat yourself on the back. Tri-State rates are not remotely competitive. They should, in fact, be looking for ways to reduce rates, not hold them steady. Another passage reads as follows. Mr. Highley says, our members have created greater flexibility for the self-supply of power and more options for local renewable energy generation. Each member will soon have the option to switch their power supply contract to partial requirements, supplying up to 50% locally from an available total pool of 300 megawatts, in addition to current 5% self-supply contract provisions and a recently created option for an additional 2% for community solar. What Mr. Highley does not tell you is that in order for any member co-op to avail themselves of this greater flexibility, they have to pay Tri-State a bunch of money up front. I won't get into the details except to say that generating local energy beyond our 5% would require us to pay Tri-State the sum of $553,000 per megawatt. And to purchase energy somewhere else requires a payment of over $1 million per megawatt. Imagine that you were renting an apartment for $1,000 a month and your landlord said you could renegotiate your rent down to $500 per month. But in order to take advantage of this deal, you had to pay him $6,000 up front. No one would take that deal, and I don't expect any of Tri-State's member co-ops to avail themselves of this new flexibility. One more passage. Finally, our members came together to address how to provide any member who asks with the cost to terminate their power contracts early. This issue was thoughtfully addressed by our members. Thoughtfully addressed by our members in order to make sure that Tri-State ends up on top. Again, Mr. Highley doesn't tell you the cost of doing this. Tri-State proposes to use a method to calculate the withdrawal payment that previously produced huge numbers which would have represented a windfall of billions of dollars for Tri-State. Again, it seems very unlikely that any of the member co-ops would find this to be the least bit attractive. United Power, Tri-State's largest member, recently sued Tri-State in court. Their filing stated that, and I quote, Tri-State is using the bylaw amendment it procured by fraud, yes, they use the word fraud, to prevent United Power from withdrawing from Tri-State on equitable terms and to purportedly add new members whose membership is unlawful under Colorado law, as well as Tri-State's Articles of Incorporation and bylaws, unquote. Tri-State has attempted to come under the jurisdiction of the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission, specifically to keep the Colorado Public Utilities Commission from directing Tri-State to allow member co-ops to leave Tri-State under fair and equitable terms, as happened with both Kit Carson and Delta Montrose. Finally, the timing of Mr. Highley's op-ed is really questionable. We're in the last week of LPEA's election of directors, and strangely enough, there are 3 candidates running who want to stay with Tri-State, regardless of how much it costs or how little control we have over our energy supply. Tri-State should not be interfering in LPEA's elections. If you haven't returned your LPEA ballot, now is the time. Don't be fooled by Mr. Highley's self-serving platitudes. Vote for cleaner energy, cheaper energy, and more local control over our co-op. Vote for Rachel Landis, Doug Foltz, or me, Guinn Unger, depending on your district. Now you know the true facts. Be informed, be safe, and be sure to vote. Thank you.